There is a Celtic game this weekend after a long international fixture. We will get your comments later on. We asked for them on Twitter, but if you are watching on YouTube or anywhere else, leave a comment below. We'll try to get to as many as we can before the end of the show. James, you've been doing some digging into the St Johnstone side of things for this weekend's game. Obviously, St Johnstone notably won the double last year, as opposed to Rangers doing anything other than the league. So where are St Johnstone in comparable to the team that won the double?
Yeah, so I think St Johnstone, when I've reviewed them looking ahead to this game, I think they have some major issues. And I think the issues have to do with talent. A club of their size and resources, I actually wrote this in a piece this past week. And when I took a look at them, they've had almost no transfers in the last decade that they've actually spent money on. I mean, they only have free transfers for the most part. They have less than probably, it's an estimate now. We don't have data for this season, but I'm estimating about 8% of our wage bill. What they were able to accomplish last season was truly excellent, but they had players like Ali McCann and Kerr, and they kind of caught lightning in a bottle. And Davidson did a very good job by all accounts. But when they got about $2 million for those two players when they sold them towards the end of the window, and that likely went to bolster the club for pandemic losses rather than get reinvested in the squad. So I think they've had a material hit to their squad. It's reflected in their performance metrics. They're down about their non-penalty XG difference so far this season through one round is down about 0.6. To put that into perspective, that's more than our non-penalty XG has changed season over season. And we've talked about how much better we've been performing. So that gives you an idea of the scope of what their performance levels, and they started last season very difficult. They had a rough patch to start the season last year, but their underlying metrics were not in line with that. This season, they're not doing very well, but their metrics are supporting that. So obviously we're talking about a cup game. Anything can happen, as we all know. Variance is very high in single games. But one of the things they've really struggled with is creating chances from open play. Middleton's not going to be in the game. May's not going to be in the game. So for a team that's already struggling in that capacity, to have two of their players that even theoretically could, hit a shot from 25 yards, which, and to be frank, that's the kind of thing outside of a set piece that's most likely. And in the game that we just recently played against them, now again, it was at home versus Hampton, but the pitch size is comparable and the crowd's likely to be heavily tilted in our favor and energized for obvious reasons. I think that they had like 0.15 XG. I mean, they basically had no chances against us of any consequence. And that game we played with Giacomakis to start. Kyogo's sounds like he's definitely going to start and play the most of the minutes. And when he was on the pitch for a half hour, basically, we blew him away. Yeah. So this is a game that we should control and dominate. I mean, I would be shocked if they don't bunker and park the bus and try to just draw this out as long as they can to keep it close. I just have a hard time seeing how they're going to get control of the game and, have a go, as they would say, in this environment with the deficiencies they're going to have in the squad. So I'm, as far as from an analytical perspective, this is about as confident as I've been going into one of these kind of cup games in recent memory, just because of this matchup and what it looks like. And I think the disparity between people saying, oh, well, they're a good cup team, and coming off of that success that they had last season, which was, really amazing for a club of their size. I don't think, I think that's a recency bias thing. And if you look at where they're actually at right now, I think we should be very, very confident.
Okay. Just to give an update on the Celtic squad itself, Ange Postecoglou was speaking today. Giacomakis is not going to be back for this. He thinks it's going to be too soon. for him to make a return. Defender Carl Starfelt seems to be a little bit too soon for him to come back, and Tom Rogic in midfield as well as a doubt for this game. Other than that, everybody is available. So you're probably looking at a very similar enough lineup to what Celtic have been putting on the pitch in recent games. Alan, the question always comes up, and it's one of the main questions that's coming into us on social media as well for today, is sort of a question going into this game as well, and that is, if St Johnstone do put 11 men behind the ball, what will we see from Celtic to break that down? Because in games before the last international break, in the second third, as we described it on last week's show, that is something they really struggled with. So what can we do to break that 11 men behind the ball down?
Yep, I agree with James. It's likely that's the way they'll go. Just before I get into that, then I noticed that their striker Kane was sent off in the last league game. I'm assuming that suspension doesn't carry over into League Cup. I think it's only if it's violent conduct, maybe, that it covers different competitions. But anyway, just want to watch out on. I mean, Middleton and May being absent just further reduces what I've always thought over the last 5-6 years is the team with the least pace in it that we play, and they compensate for it well in other ways by being compact and organised. But this is a team, as James said, that has really struggled to create chances, and the midfield especially, I think, is probably the weakest area of theirs. And you could argue it's the weakest area of Celtic's as well, for all the reasons that we've spoken about. So I think it looks likely, and it makes sense to me, that it being a cup match, they hang in there for as long as they can, and they'll have 3 centre-backs that will play, that won't deviate from the width of the 6-yard box, probably, never mind the 18-yard box. They'll stay narrow, and they'll probably stay quite deep as well. So Celtic will have a forest of, to pardon the pun, a forest of big lads to navigate through, which is a familiar scenario. I think there's as much, how does Celtic get through it? Well, easy answer is patience. Showed that in the game at home against St Johnstone, where we didn't create a lot, but by the end of the game, we'd especially in the last 15 minutes, we'd really kind of opened them up, many times. And does it matter whether you have all your chances in the first 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes? If you win 2-0, it probably doesn't really matter, actually. Celtic have moved to a model under Postecoglou where they are exerting more control over games. So expect St Johnstone to be defending that big pitch without the ball for a considerable amount of time. The number of passes that Celtic are, and even the number of possession that Celtic are having in recent times, is, if you can believe it, is even going up. I think possession pre the last international break was 64%. In the last game since the last international break, it's actually 70%. I mean, so that's really, and playing St Johnstone, I can imagine it's going to be even higher than that, because aside from long balls up to Kane, they're not going to have a huge amount to go at. How do you break them down? As I say, patience. And I don't just mean patience from the players, I mean patience from us. The majority of people inside Hampden have got to stay with the team and realise this, for all their frailties in creation this season, this is still a very, very difficult team to break down with a decent goalkeeper and decent defenders. They're not going to throw goals away, right? We've got to stay with them. Got to accept that it may take 70 minutes, 75 minutes when legs and minds start to tire before you start to create those chances. Kyogo playing. Kyogo spent the last 2 weeks sat on a plane. He should be raring to go. He's had a total of about 40 minutes of football in the last 2 weeks, so he should be nice and fresh, hopefully. And the rest of the attack, I think, are in pretty good form. So that speed of movement, obviously, again against a packed defence, you've got to keep moving them. You've got to keep making the defenders make decisions. So that means moving the focus of the attack, moving the angle of the attack. It doesn't, yes, by all means, chuck in the odd long ball, the odd high ball just to mix it up. Keep them thinking. If the worst thing you can do is against a packed defence is fall into a pattern what I call the sort of horseshoe of futility, where the ball goes round and back and round again. Even if you lose possession, talk about putting risk into it. Just mix it up sometimes. Try a long shot, for heaven's sake. Try it. Try the odd long diagonal. Try the odd cross into the box. Just keep mixing it up, but be allied to being patient, I think, is the way forward. And trust each other. Trust that quality will eventually come through. We've got a reasonably strong bench now compared to where we were at the beginning of the season. So, put it out there, take some risks, run your legs off. Someone else comes on for the last 15 to change the game potentially. It's all those things. There's no magic formula. It's hard work, it's application, it's patience, it's variety.
Yeah, just to confirm that Chris Keane is available for this game. His suspension doesn't come in until next week. Glenn Middleton is a doubt for St Johnstone. He picked up a knock on international duty. And Stevie May is also out for this game. That was confirmed earlier on today. So they're missing a couple of players.
I mean, by the way, I mean, the last three league games, they've actually only conceded 1 goal, 2 clean sheets in a row. So they're coming into this, decent form. I mean, defensively, they're pretty good. The defense is still one of the strongest in the league. It's just up top, they're really struggling. But yeah, they're actually not in bad form in terms of the last 3 games.
Yeah, they're a defense first side anyway. So if they put more defenders on the pitch and backs to the walls, then they're going to be a pretty tough side to break down. James, Edward Y of Oz is coming in on YouTube here. He's asking about the Beaton revival. Does Beaton's role in this game, is that going to be crucial for Celtic breaking that down? Because he does have a good range of passing that he can hit the first ball through if Kyogo makes that run.
Yeah, assuming he's going to start at the 6, I think he could be vitally important. Meaning, within the context of Alan and my discussion and debate on Jota last week about taking risks, and I think this is the exact kind of game where taking passing risks in the final third should be of paramount priority, and Beaton fits with that hugely. Particularly with Rogic not playing or available. And just another statistic about to support Alan's comment on their likely lack of pace and kind of quality in midfield. They're third to last in the league. Well, they're tied for second to last with Motherwell as far as counterattacking shots. Right. So if you think about this from a risk reward perspective, one of the things that you'd be worried about if you're going to be aggressive and try to create chances through risky passes would be exposure and transition and getting counterattacked. And that's just not their strength. They have not been doing a good job at that. They're going to be missing most of their pace that they do have and quality in the attacking third. So for me, from a risk reward, this should be a barrage, an onslaught of attacking their box with risky passes. And depending on selection, I mean, again, this to me, even Abada would be his kind of poacher's strength and ability to create, chances off of deflections and anticipating balls and movements in the air, that kind of thing. Could be a good game for him. So, we've talked about in the past some kind of my idea of just when we face these bunkered teams to out physicality, I mean, and that with our better quality and a little bit better athleticism, let's just go ahead and get it in the mixer. Take the chances in the risky passes, not necessarily high balls like Alan says, as far as high crosses. Although I think Kyogo could be really dangerous in that regard against them Saturday, but more so kind of vertical passing, direct balls in the channels, try to hit runners, and if they intercept, then we counter press them and staunch out whatever counterattack they're probably going to try. And what they're probably going to do is kick the ball long, in which case we've seen for the most part our center backs have been handling that reasonably well. And again, they don't really have the speed out wide to, for even with Kane playing and for him to play in someone making a vertical run. Again, it's a risk, but given their profile, I think it's less of a risk than we'd face versus, a guy like Ginelli from Hearts or, some of these other guys that can present a little bit more of a threat in that counterattack.
Yeah, just a very quick one before we move on to the comments. On the long ball situation with Celtic, Alan, you might have the data on this. What effect does the fact that it's probably going to be Stephen Welsh in the centre back position now with Cameron Carter-Vickers, does that have on our ability to play long diagonal balls from the centre back position?
Yeah, I mean, Welsh actually stood up. One of the areas that we commented on in the show last year, the few shining lights of last season, was that Welsh, one of the areas that Welsh improved as the season went on was his passing and his range of passing. I say range of passing. I mean, he wasn't one like Bitton who's going to potentially ping a 50-yarder, but just in terms of not asking for the world, just asking you to break that first line. So even if St Johnstone, they may, if they're being bold, try and put a couple of attacking midfielders like a Wotherspoon perhaps, or I don't know who else they've got that comes to mind.
McPherson they got from St.
McPherson maybe. Yeah, they may elect to go and put those two behind Kane and try and get them to support him where possible. That would kind of make sense. What you won't find, I suspect, with those two players is that they'll try not to be on the wrong side of the ball when the balls move forward. So if you do have a defender like Welsh who's capable of getting through that initial three, then you're down to 7 players between you and the goal. And although 5 of them will be defenders, you'll take those odds. So just that ability of the defender to take out that front three. And if you think about other teams that Celtic have played, Motherwell, for example, are very bold and their front three stay high. So you're constantly, pretty much the first pass takes out their front three, and suddenly you're a team of Celtic's quality against their quality of defender, and you'll take that all day long. Whereas when we played against Livingston, they just would not let you get behind them. So even the striker was defending in the middle of his own half. So it was very difficult to even get beyond that front press, to get to anybody. So to me, Welsh, long story short, I think if they do go a little bit bold and do play a couple of players in slightly advanced positions, I think he's got a real strength actually in that ball progression. And then we've seen with Carter-Vickers, he's developing that signature pass from right centre back to what's the old inside right position. So he had a great connection with Rogic, but actually it doesn't seem to matter who's playing there. He's finding Turnbull there with regularity as well. So that pass that is almost his signature move tends to take out at least 2 or 3 opponents every time he does it, and that's a real good base camp to then start building the game. Because then if you can get your creatives on the ball halfway inside their half, you've got a real chance of building from there.
Okay. Anything else you just want to touch on before we move on to the comments?
I was just going to, again, I'm just making the same point again, but their top expected assister in the SPFL is actually May at 0.14 expected assists per 90 minutes, which is pretty average and low. And he's their best, and he's not playing.
He's their best pressing forward. He's been their best pressing forward too, Alan.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I mean, we may well get egg in our face, and if it was last year, then we would be really majoring on all the concerns. But my sense is I'm expecting. I'll be honest, right? I'm expecting Postecoglou another 2 weeks on the training ground with these players. I'm expecting another level of improvement in Celtic's play, another level in terms of cohesion, another level of control, and therefore I'm relaxed as I can be about these things.